Our Deputy General Secretary is going to second the annual report, and then we'll have Nadia, okay?
President, I'll try and be brief. Colleagues, the General Secretary is correct when he speaks in such high regard of the members and the delegates in this hall today. And it's always humbling to stand before you. We don't often acknowledge that point enough about the role that you play in this trade union, this great trade union of ours. Without you, there wouldn't be a CPSU. And without people like you up and down the country in workplaces, there wouldn't be a trade union movement. And I applaud you here today at the start of this 92nd CPSU conference. It's an honour to second the annual report. I will attempt to be brief. They've robbed much of my speaking points, but we'll address them nevertheless. It's been a very difficult year. There's absolutely no doubt about that. We've had hard choices to make at every hand's turn, colleagues. And yes, we were challenged after the Croke Park 2 rejection. That rejection was a resounding result and a credit to all members. But in the face of draconian FEMPI legislation, it was not possible to see off the Haddington Road Agreement, and I'm being very frank there, without a broader coalition of willing trade unions. We have worked hard on, it's been part of my role as Deputy General Secretary since its introduction to ensure that its implementation is as fair as it can be in terms of it being such a draconian agreement and to limit its worst aspects for members. I point to the reduction secured in the alternate to the leave contribution, the salary sacrifice, which was reduced by 62% to reflect the net cost after tax reductions. And importantly, we also ensured that this aspect of the agreement was applied fairly to work shares, with agreement that the salary or leave sacrifice would be on a pro rata basis. We still await other aspects of the agreement to be implemented, including the controversial rationalisation proposals. And some members see these proposals as a straightforward grade merger. I say to those members, be careful what you wish for. We have yet to see the colour of Deeper's money on this particular nugget in the Haddington Road Agreement, and we should be cautious. And it's an issue that will be debated at this conference. There's no doubt that these last few years have hit ordinary workers very hard, with the combination of additional working hours, changes in increment duration, leave or salary sacrifices, all heaped more pain on top of the imposed levies and pay cuts suffered earlier in this crisis. In the order of an 18% hit on incomes has been the price of gross indulgence over the so-called Celtic Tiger years, an obscenity that has been paid for on the backs of ordinary workers, including those who lost their jobs during the crisis. The very reasons that fed our gut instinct in terms of opposition to the Haddington Road Agreement, colleagues. The battleground for the future has to be, as highlighted by the General Secretary, the abolition of the pension levy and a return to normal pay bargaining in the public services, colleagues. By 2016, it will be 8 years since the last normal course increase under towards 2016. In this context, the years of austerity must end if we are to have any chance of lifting the economy through boosting take-home pay. Colleagues, enough is enough. It is high time for pay restoration for public servants. Turning to outsourcing, one of the single biggest threats facing our union and its members is that of outsourcing. At a very senior level in government and across many departments, it seems that there is a philosophical commitment to outsourcing and privatisation, typified by an attitude that seeks to achieve outcomes whether or not it makes sense, and in most cases it doesn't. Service provision in the public service is second to none and cannot be matched by private sector companies where profit is king and wages are cheap. Typical of this was the badly thought out revenue outsourcing, which delivered call centre work and property tax to the private sector. This job could and should have been done in revenue, an organisation that has proven its capability time and time again in delivering on its main responsibility of tax collection. No small thanks to our 2,000 members who work there. members who have the expertise that outsourcing can never provide. Only yesterday, colleagues, at the Executive Committee, we hear tell of another proposed outsourcing by government in relation to the Garda Fines Office, and our Executive Committee took decisions to battle that particular proposal. I'm looking at my colleagues over here from Shannon, from the Department of Transport. We also face outsourcing problems in that department, and we will battle those too. And in every department where such propositions come before us. Currently facing us is another badly thought out proposition in the Department of Social Protection in relation to plans to outsource work activation responsibilities on behalf of the long-term unemployed to the private sector. Currently, tenders are being considered from companies who will likely have little or no experience in the delivery of social welfare services and whose sole motivation will again be the underlying profit motive with payment by results. The long-term unemployed colleagues deserve better from this government, as do the staff of the department, 3,000 of whom are our members and who have been delivering on probably the single biggest transformation in the civil service with the Intro project, which places a new focus on work activation at the very centre of service delivery, following the integration of the department with former FOSS Employment Services and the Community Welfare Service. International experience of the outsourcing of such activities has by and large been negative, but our government is hell-bent on it anyway. And why so? Because the Troika said so, like they got everything right, eh? There's no doubt that at the root of this proposal is a right-wing philosophy which believes that driving long-term unemployed people off the live register into minimum wage jobs is the way forward. Now, it may be, but only if we want our country to be a pure economic entity without any emphasis on decent work and societal norms where the disadvantaged are protected. What we want to see, colleagues, is the best public service ethos continue in the delivery of social welfare services, and with the transformation and development of intro offices countrywide, that they are allowed to deliver on their remit and carry out all work activation initiatives, and that government ditch their so-called job pat outsourcing proposals, which are unnecessary, troika-driven and unlikely to work. On Monday next, we present ourselves at the arbitration board to fight this outsourcing. And today at this conference in Galway, we call on government and we call on a Labour minister to do the right thing and ditch this proposal. Turning to another bad news story with a little bit of good news hidden in it. That's the developments in relation to sick leave. In 2014, we saw the introduction of major changes in sick leave entitlements right across the public service. A binding decision determined by the Labour Court back in 2012. Over the last year, we have worked hard, though, to ensure that those who face critical illness will have their pay protected. This has been achieved through the introduction of a critical illness protocol, which will ensure the continuation of full pay for 6 months and half pay for 6 months for those members unfortunately facing such difficult circumstances. Now, having said that, the cuts on sick leave pay are harsh, with a general reduction for ordinary sick leave to full pay for 3 months and half pay for 3 months. We will be vigorous, though, in pursuing the fair application of these new regulations, ensuring that the critical illness protocol is applied correctly and that HR managers use their discretion wisely and fairly for those cases that do not immediately meet the criteria for critical illness. We will also be vigilant in ensuring that additional protections achieved in relation to pregnancy-related illness and disability-related matters are implemented as determined by the Labour Court last December. Turning to other work-related matters, colleagues, much of which I've been dealing with at General Council. PMDS. During the year, we've negotiated changes in the PMDS process, which will include an appeal mechanism for the first time to ensure that members can appeal unfair ratings under the revised scheme. Although management has attempted to limit such appeals to the lowest 2 ratings. And wait for this, they also propose to charge members for appeals. to avoid cost to the state. We've made it very clear that there will be no agreement on PMDS where charges apply in the appeal process. And as a result, this draconian measure has been dropped. Next thing, they'll want to charge you for turning up in front of a rights commissioner, perhaps, or turning up at the Labour Court. I do believe we still live in a democracy. Another aspect of the changes to PMDS includes the calibration process, which is supposed to bring consistency to ratings. While this aspect has only been implemented at higher grades currently, we will be scrutinising it to ensure that it does not become forced distribution of ratings by any other name when introduced for our members, something we just won't accept. Owen touched on recruitment and promotion issues. We've battled with DEPR during the year to ensure that their planned open EO recruitment is matched as per long-standing agreement, an agreement that's as old as I am, for equivalent numbers of internal promotions. This row blew up on further proposals for an open competition without any reference to the need for an interdepartmental competition, which is what we're insisting upon. We've also lodged claims for a clerical officer competition, and we've criticised excessive use of fixed-term contracts, which resulted in over 1,400 temporary clerical officers in the civil service last year, never mind the wider public service. While some progress has been made with establishment competitions for people point and revenue, we need to see recruitment at this important frontline level returning to normal course permanent appointments like we've been used to in the past. We've stated very clearly that we will not accept any growing trends that could lead to the casualisation of this key grade of ours. And we will continue, colleagues, to press home the case for frontline staff where the real work of the public service is done. Cross-stream promotions is another recruitment issue that we've been dealing with during the year, where we've secured agreement for the first time ever to lift restrictions on access to promotion based on grade, with a new agreement on cross-stream promotion, which will see access opening up to members to much higher level posts, with qualification rather than grade being the key criteria. An effort by DEPR to limit the scope to salary banding was turned over in advance of an arbitration hearing when they finally conceded that promotional outlets should be open to applicants based on appropriate qualifications. Much credit, as you hear, is due to my colleague Paul McSweeney, who led for CPSU in these negotiations. Thank you, Paul. And I suppose on that note, can I take this opportunity to thank all my colleagues for their commitment, support during the year at General Council and everywhere else, and also to the President and the Executive Committee for their contribution on key issues. And I echo the devoted thanks to people like Jim O'Shea and Pádraig McCormack and Joe Rowe and others who have made a very significant contribution to this great union of ours over the years. I'd also like to acknowledge the close relationship I have with Cliona and Dennis and Mary Murta in the Membership Information and Rights Unit, to acknowledge the very good work that they're doing and to thank them for all their assistance over the last year. Not far to go, President. I just want to touch on redeployment. It's a very important issue for our members. And Paul was also involved with me in discussions on the redeployment appeals process, which is now enacted, and also the latest version of the redeployment toolkit, which sets out the rules for redeployment. As part of this, we have ensured that there is consideration also of the central transfer list and CAF for posts that fall outside the 45-kilometre limit, which is something that we fought hard for at the Labour Relations Commission. Although we're still facing a struggle in departments to ensure that they follow the central transfer and CAF rules for transfer, particularly where redeployment is not an option. Colleagues, there's a lot of pressure on us to get through all of the business today and tomorrow in Galway. So I'm only covering in brief some of the issues we're dealing with at General Council, all of which are of major importance to members. We face into the future knowing we have difficult tasks ahead to try and protect the terms and conditions of our members, to restore pay, to abolish levies, to fight for a return to normal pay bargaining in the public services. We must also be vigilant in protecting pensions and ensuring a fair outcome for those members affected by the change in the state pension. It is not a time to be complacent, nor is it a time to beat ourselves up. We will remain, at the end of this crisis, a union whose spirit is strong, if somewhat bloodied, a union that is well placed to face the many challenges ahead. To achieve this, colleagues, and to learn some lessons from the history of 1913, we must stand united in this union and at our executive committee. Now is not the time to be scrabbling over the scraps on the table. Now is the time to focus all of our attention and energy on the things that matter to our members. We must also stand united with the wider trade union movement in whatever shape that takes to protect the future for workers and to restore our great movement for future workers too. In doing so, we must also seek to repair damaged relations with other unions, although always maintaining our core principles in the CPSU. Colleagues, I commend the annual report to you. I wish you all the best for this conference, particularly those up for election. Let us make this conference one to remember for all the right reasons. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you, Derek. Can I now put the annual report to the floor? Those in favour of adopting the annual report? Those against? Abstentions? Thank you. The annual report is adopted.